at Jerome's house. Zayden was seated and drinking tea. He had come to ask about that particular project. The enchanting smell of the incense smoke of agarwood blew over from one side.
Dad, this project with CEO Hiddlestone is very important to the Dawsons.
Jerome said as he made tea.
Of course. The Dawsons will soon rise one level higher.
Zayden continued happily.
So what's the status of this project?
No problem, Troy has gone to get the contract signed today. Your grandson has never disappointed you.
Jerome was praising his son. Zayden was pleased and nodded his head. All the men of the Dawson family were outstanding.
Dad!
Troy came running in like a storm, a nasty expression on his face. When he saw that Zayden was here, he didn't dare to say anything.
We were just talking about you.
Jerome motioned at his father.
Grandpa wanted to ask how's the project with CEO Hiddlestone going so far? Has he signed the contract already?
Troy looked at Zayden and became a little nervous and stuttered.
This, project.
When he saw how he seemed to be hesitant with words, Jerome's face fell and he had a bad feeling about this.
I went to his office today. But CEO Hiddlestone had to attend to other matters and wasn't around. He asked me to go again tomorrow to get it signed.
Troy managed to squeeze this out. If Grandpa knew he lost this deal, Grandpa was going to kill him.
This CEO Hiddlestone started off with nothing and he's always been very arrogant. Since he asked you to wait one day, then just wait.
Zayden replied, his face was full of smiles.
Yes, Grandpa, I will wait like you said.
Troy forced himself to reply. But Jerome could tell that something was wrong. He didn't say anything until his father had left. Then he called Troy into the study with a dark expression on his face.
What is going on?
Jerome angrily shouted.
If you dare to hide anything from me, I will beat you to death.
Dad! This has nothing to do with me. It's Elise.
Troy replied indignantly. He angrily continued.
That CEO Hiddlestone said he would only sign the contract with Elise. And everybody else doesn't have the right to even see him. I was literally chased out of the office by them immediately.
Jerome had a nasty expression on his face. His son had been chased out?
That Elise must be sleeping with CEO Hiddlestone, otherwise how could things turn out like that? CEO Hiddlestone also said that if the one signing with him isn't Elise, then we can forget about this project and he doesn't care.
He could choose not to care, but the Dawsons couldn't.
Do you know how much the Dawsons have invested in this project?
Jerome glowered at his son, all ready to whack him to death.
If we lose this project, even if I don't kill you, your grandfather will.
Troy's face turned ghostly pale instantly.
What do we do now, Dad?
He asked anxiously. He thought that he could just claim credit for all this work he didn't do. But who knew it turned out to be such a sticky situation?
What do we do now? Who asked you to fire Elise? Now we have lost the project and both of us have to get out.
Jerome scolded angrily. Troy didn't dare to speak up. His dad was the one who fired Elise, since he was the CEO.
Get Elise back and sign this project. Once she has got this signed, throw her out again.
Jerome shouted.
Will she be willing?
Troy asked cautiously.
Call her now.
Troy gulped and didn't dare to argue. He took out his phone and called Elise, but nobody picked up. Elise didn't want to pick up any calls from them at all now.
Dad, she's not answering. What do we do?
What do we do?
Jerome laughed coldly.
Looks like this young lady has some pride, huh? I suppose we have to pay her a visit and ask her to come back.
If this project weren't this important, he didn't want to see the 3 members of Bill's family at all. Oh wait, there was still that crazy son-in-law of his, so 4 members now. Now that Elise had lost her right to fight for the family business, he didn't want to bother himself with these useless pieces of garbage. But he couldn't think too much about all this now. Jerome immediately drove Troy to Elise's place. Very soon, the two of them reached the old and run-down Magnolia estates. Jerome frowned as he looked at the area around him, walking extremely carefully, as if he was afraid of dirtying his pants.
It's this house.
Troy pointed at one of the doors. It seemed like they would never come to this sort of place. The Dawsons were rich, but the money was all with Zayden. And even though his children worked for the Dawson Group, they only received a salary and annual bonuses. After Bill became paralyzed, he was unable to work anymore, and so he wasn't able to support his family anymore. He had a house to live in because his father pitied him. Troy banged hard on the door.
Coming! Why do you have to bang so hard on the door?
That was Mary's voice coming from the house. She opened the door to find Jerome and his son standing at the door, and she froze for a while. After her initial shock, her face immediately fell.
What are you doing here?
We are looking for Elise.
Jerome calmly said this as he pushed the door open and walked in.
Where is she?
She's not in.
Mary spoke nastily.
What do you want with her?
Elise. Your Uncle Jerome is here. Aren't you coming out to greet me?
Jerome couldn't be bothered with Mary, and started shouting. Elise could hear him from her room. She didn't expect them to really come to her place. All these years, even after her father was paralyzed, Jerome had never visited them. What did they want today?
Come along, let's go.
John pulled Elise's hand and dragged her out. Jerome started laughing when he saw Elise come outside.
Elise, are you still angry with me?
Elise didn't respond.
About the company firing you, that was just a misunderstanding.
A look of I don't care flashed across Jerome's face.
But the company needs you back to sign that contract with CEO Hiddlestone. If you still want to leave the company, you can leave after the contract is signed.
Elise's body started shaking violently from rage when she heard this. When they didn't need her, they just fired her. When they needed her, they immediately came looking for her. What did they take her as? A tool to just dispose of it after using it? Mary also understood what was going on. Jerome and his son had actually fired Elise, and she didn't even know.
Jerome, what is the meaning of this? What do you take Elise as? What do you take this entire family as?
She was furious.
Auntie Mary, your family isn't really worth much. Now it's only because Elise is of some value. Otherwise I wouldn't bother to come to such a rundown house like yours.
Troy said disdainfully. Mary's face was filled with rage, and she lifted a hand to slap Troy's face.
Hit if you dare.
Jerome shouted threateningly.
You old hag, you dare to hit a member of the Dawson family?
Mary bit her lips. He just called her an old hag. What an insult. Suddenly there was the sound of a loud slap. Troy held his face in disbelief. John had hit him yet again.
Who gave you the guts to insult my mother-in-law like that?
John took a step forward and said calmly.
If you need to ask for a favor, you'd better ask humbly and nicely. Didn't your dad teach you some manners?
This marks the end of Chapter 5. I hope you guys are enjoying my work. If you do, please subscribe to my channel and comment for any suggestions or any other novel you all want to be featured here.